our meeting tonight with a continuation of our Verizon public hearing for the pole setting on Old Neck Road, and I'll take a motion to reopen the public hearing. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Greg, you want to take us through?
So we have a request from Verizon, the pole that is supported by a guy wire. That guy wire goes into a tree across the street. That tree is slated for removal, and the guy wire needs to find a new home. And Verizon proposing a new pole on that same side of the street, obviously at a different location, I think at the property line, basically. So in a nutshell, I believe that's it. Verizon is here and can explain a little more detail, perhaps.
You could take this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, my name's Everett Bryan. I'm a right-of-way engineer with Engineering Data Solutions representing Verizon New England at 125 High Street in Boston. And the petition is, as it was read, is at the request of the property owner on Old Neck Road is doing some work on their property. And this tree needs to be removed, so we're proposing placing what we call a guy stub pole and an anchor and guy on the property. Actually, the pole will be within the public way, but the anchor and guy, thanks to Mrs. Campbell, has agreed to let us put that on her property and has granted us an easement for that purpose.
Any questions from the board?
Depends on easements, of course.
Any comments from anyone here from Old Neck Road? Okay, well, without having any specific comments, is there a time frame when this is happening, or?
Mrs. Campbell requested this be done before the winter months, and we'll try to get it scheduled by then. Typically, we schedule 30 to 60 days out. We'll try to get this one in before the winter.
Will there be any disruption?
There should be none.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other comments? We're just talking about the Verizon pole.
Oh.
All right, well, with that, I will take do we have to approve this before we close the public hearing?
So you close the evidentiary portion, and then you vote, and then you close the hearing.
All right, so I will take a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And now I'll take a motion for the work on the pole setting on Old Neck Road.
Make a motion to approve the request from Verizon New England for one new sole-owned pole in the vicinity of 7 and 9 Old Neck Road. Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, item 2, Manchester by the Sea 325th Anniversary Committee.
75th, actually. It should say 75.
I was sitting there thinking, I thought we already had our 350th, so I'm wondering if we do. So, in the tradition of Manchester, we have an amazing celebration for our 350th. And while the 375 is extremely important, and we certainly want to mark that, we're probably going to save up a lot of our stuff for the 400th. But for right now, I've had a wonderful discussion with our previous chair, Mr. Van Zenekel, about the process and what he went through. And he's willing to advise, he's not willing to run it again, but he's willing to advise. And I'm asking the board to go ahead and put forward a recommendation from the committee to identify a couple people who may chair or co-chair that 375th celebration. Again, working with us and the previous members of that 350th to come up with a plan for the celebration, which is only 2 years away. So it's a good thing we get it started. So anybody have any thoughts, comments?
So duration of the committee, and is there actually a charge written already?
No, we'll get there. I think the thought is, let's see if we can get some folks to volunteer, and then we'll ask them to formulate what their initial charge and plan would be, and we'll do that together. But it's basically identifying a plan for the 375th. Okay. So we'll go ahead and form that committee. Greg, if we can get a notice out on our usual channels, and have them, ask them to come to you if they're interested, and we'll start gathering names in a list. And if anybody knows anyone who'd be really good at this and enjoy doing it, perhaps, let's get some recommendations too.
My one thought about the whole thing is we absolutely should have at least one representative from the historical museum,
Oh, good point.
whether it's their
Yeah.
curator or the chairman of the board or.
So let's just reach out to them and see if maybe
That's a logical.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. Okay, very good. Item 3 is a public hearing for tree removal on 35 Vine Street. I will ask for a motion to open a public hearing. Can you start that?
We're a little early.
Oh, am I going too fast?
Yeah.
Oh, goodness me. Okay. Well, Jim, you're here? Do you want to do your little...
Jim?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Nope, that's Brian Miller.
Brian, I'm sorry, I'm
That's
so
okay.
confused with people,
Yeah, Jim
left and
Mitchell's
right.
not-
Jim's not here. Okay. All right, and Harbor Master update, well, we're moving too quick, I guess.
We can jump to consent and
Yeah.
correspondence if you like.
All right, why don't we do that? We have the consent agenda for the Board of Selectmen minutes for September 17th and the joint meeting minutes for July 11th and the 5th. We need to recognize October 7th and 14th and have a proclamation about Cape Ann Plein Air Week. Signing of the special town election warrants, which we need to do, and they're right here, and we'll do that before we leave. Appointment of the FY19 election officers, and approval of the special events permit for the Touch-A-Truck. Anything need to come out of that?
I have one little amendment on the minutes on page, let me see here, that's 25. The minutes from, here we go. Sorry. September 17th, and it's on page, page 8 of the minutes or 25 of the packet we received. And it's a very silly little something. But under item 13, executive session, second paragraph, the removal of the C in my name.
No, I'm not okay with that change.
Well, if we're keeping, and then, hey, I'm sure, word check loves to add it. It's very generous that way.
Okay, with that amendment agreed upon, I'll take a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Correspondence, resident letter for the interest in the shellfish warden position, building inspector with the later, the request for a certificate of occupancy, the resident letter on the Chowder House costs, and the legislative breakfast invitation. Greg, do you want to take us through anything on any of these topics?
So Selfish, that's something I think we might hear from Brian a little later this
Yep.
evening. There is some work being advanced to try to reopen some of the flats, so that will take a while. Could be a couple of years, so there's no rush here. Building inspector, that's FYI. Legislative breakfast invitation is FYI as well. In terms of the Chowder House costs, so you have the letter concerned about some of the cost items on that. And in process, we can talk about the process we currently have. We can discuss whether or not it would be worth our while to do an audit of that project. Sort of how you want to respond. We're happy to talk about what we've done and what we could do in the future.
So I've shared a couple of thoughts with Greg, but does anyone have any specific feedback for Greg or any direction relative to that? First, I want to thank Brenda Pillow, who did a very extensive study. And I have been in contact with her, and she knows that we're taking this up tonight. Unfortunately, she can't be here, but I told her we'd follow up. But we really do appreciate her hard work on pulling this together for us. So I feel like we do need to have some kind of a formal response back.
Absolutely.
So, any thoughts or comments on direction for Greg?
So if there's, if we're talking about adjusting our oversight, I lean towards having an objective professional agency engineering firm doing it. The right course is that we're supposed to have a clerk of the works that's performing objectively and in an auditable manner, and I think that that's the right thing for us to do. These projects rely on existing professional skills.
So wasn't that part of hiring a project manager into the department?
Yes,
Yes.
so this
Okay.
predates
So
that.
This project predates that, but I feel like to some extent we have kind of taken care of one of the concerns many people have of project management.
Right, right. I mean, during this project, we did have an engineering firm serving
Right.
as project manager. So their consultation on this was they felt that things were progressing appropriately. Difference of opinion about that, and there often will be, regardless of the project.
But wasn't one of the concerns that as project manager, they were also overseeing payments that went to them? Isn't that one of her concerns in this?
So oftentimes, and it's a sort of an ongoing debate in the profession, should you have the engineer who designed and developed the project also be serving as clerk of the works? There are two schools of thought on that, and there are pros and cons to both. It's from a sort of check and balance perspective, it's obviously helpful to have someone who's not involved with the firm. The challenge becomes that there'll be times when the original engineers everyone starts pointing fingers at each other, and no one takes responsibility when the clerk isn't the same as the engineer. That's sort of the con of not following that model. But I can certainly understand and usually have done going the other way with having the clerk being separate from the engineering firm.
It just seemed like having had that would have been perhaps a little
Yes. Yep.
Not on that, I comment on the building inspector letter.
Yeah, I just want to finish this one thing first. Anything else on that?
Yeah, I guess I found Brenda's analysis to be thorough and, very insightful. Whether or not she has everything correct, I'm not entirely sure, so I kind of feel like it's something that we need to, I know we're trying to do things to improve situations. Project manager is a good example, but nonetheless, it still feels like when these large projects come along, something doesn't feel like we're fully prepared. And I think it's something that, specific to the Chowder House, there's questions. I think it's also, to me, less as much about the Chowder House specifically, although I do have questions because of her analysis. But I also feel like we're exposed on a future front process-wise, and project manager may help. But project manager is just managing a process. I think there's, an accountability on cost that exceeds a project manager. Maybe project managers are involved, but I think there's a financial management accountability that, especially with the school project coming on, there's a lot of big items in our future where I feel like project cost management tied into project finance, tied into our operating budget, especially when we see prospects for overspending on certain horizons. I just feel like cost is something that we could do a better job of. And I'm not criticizing the way we do it, I'm just saying we need to do a better job. So I would like to see this further investigated, not as a looking for finger pointing. I would just look at it as a healthy exercise in what didn't we do right, so that we don't potentially do it again. So I'd like to see some sort of follow-up on Brenda's work, to respond to Brenda, but it's not really Brenda. With all respect to Brenda, it's not really, this fits into a bigger question I have before this letter, which is, are we as tight as we could be on cost management?
Right, so just to summarize the direction that I sort of had conversations with Greg about, we're really on two fronts. One is just verifying and understanding whether it's an independent audit, whatever, of that project. It's sort of the postmortem that we talked about in terms of understanding where the costs were and how they turned out, and if there's any questions that were brought up relative to the letter, that we had answers for those and understand it. And even if they're not the best, we've got our way to improve it. The second piece is the process part, understanding what the new process is now that we've got Chuck and our project manager on board. And then the third tier of that is really this financial oversight that you're talking about. And how do we create a mechanism for that? Is it something that, is a check and balance through the town administrator and administration side? Is the finance committee involved in any of this? The question really sort of raises the question of how we want to look at financial piece. I don't want to overlay more work, but if we can identify check-in points along the way, or some kind of a process that identifies those three areas, I think that would be helpful. So that was sort of directionally where I was headed. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
All right, last thing, we're going to go to our last piece.
So just in terms of how to best review the Charter House specifically, do you want to bring in an outside person to review that?
My guess is, I don't know what the rest of the board thinks. I think it'd be helpful to have a verification on the inside, because it's easy to look inside, and when you've looked at it for so often, it's hard to evaluate it. So I would say for that, I would say yes.
I think it's an exercise that would be useful. Again, I'm not interested in deep mining to ferret out, liabilities, whether or not that's the case. I'm more interested in just some independent assessment, overview, for the sake of not just this project, just in general.
And helping us set the right path so that happens.
So I think in many regards, it could be put in the context of a process improvement for ourselves using this project. And in the course of doing that, if there's an analysis, follow up on some of Brenda's points, or even some of our own points, it'd be worthwhile.
Okay, that's good. We'll come back to the consent later. I want to get back on schedule. So now I'm willing, if we can, to open up a public hearing for the request of public tree removals on 35 Vine Street. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
So you want to take one at a time?
We're gonna do one
We'll do one at a time.
location, okay.
Yeah, we'll start with 35 Vine and then we'll go to 40.
Yep, okay, so on 35 Vine, there's an 18-inch Norway maple that is not doing well. And the tree warden recommends that it be removed. As the DPW recommends the same.
John?
Yeah, I looked at the tree, and it's in about 90% decline. I would say it probably won't bud out this spring. Here again, I chose to have a hearing on it because of the sensitivity in that area and the other issues with other trees. I could have possibly just deemed it a safety issue. There's an awful lot of dead wood over an area between where the kids go back and forth to the high school. So my recommendation would be to remove it, and I will contact the Friends of the Trees to see if they want to contact the owners. Perhaps we can get some replacement trees on that side of the street there.
Any comments from the board? Any comments from the public on 35 Vine? All right, I'll take a motion to remove the tree on 35 Vine Street.
Second.
So just pedantically, shouldn't we be holding the public hearing on both items and voting on them separately once we close the public hearing? Or is- Okay.
All right, we'll vote after we close the public hearing, how's that? Okay, I remove my motion. All right, 41 Vine Street, same concept?
Yep, I'll turn it over to Tom.
Yeah, it's another, this is a one tree in a cluster of 5 volunteers, Norway members that seated themselves. This tree is completely dead at this time, one of a cluster of 5, and when we're there, we'll tidy the area up a little, and maybe others will do better with this one gone.
Any questions from the board on that? Any questions from the public? Just identify yourself, thank you.
Hi, I'm Kevin Petrini, 36 Vine Street, corner of Lincoln and Vine. The board asked me on my tree to replant a tree on my lot, and there was some opposition when I took mine down. And I like the beauty of the neighborhood, and I just have some concerns with taking these trees down. Is something going to be planting in their place by chance, or is the board going to enforce that? Because it was enforced on my lot, so I just want to make sure everything's fair.
I think, Tom, did you just say that we were going to...
I'm sure they'll be agreeable to some trees planted on that side of the street.
I can speak for this one. Let's go one at a time. So I just want to hear from what everyone has to say.
Hi, I'm Jen Powers. I'm the property manager at 41 Vine Street. And this tree has actually started to lose limbs and has damaged cars that are parked along there. So there's definitely been some damage as a result of it. And they're, unlike the trees across the street, like Tom said, they're kind of, they're right like in the road. So the roots are even coming up in the road as opposed to like any sort of sidewalk. And what did you call it? They like kind of like, they're a cluster, yeah, exactly.
Norway maples have probably seeded themselves and would just let it grow into trees.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know about replanting there or not because we are still within the buffer zone, so we would have to talk to the Conservation Commission to see if they would approve of any replanting.
Well, in response, let's check and make sure that if replanting can happen, that we follow up.
It couldn't happen where the area she's talking about.
Right.
It certainly can happen in a nice, long,
Other
open
areas. So
stretch.
I think that the intent here, from what I'm hearing, is that we would like to have those 2 trees removed, but also look at the way to increase planting along that area to bring it back in any areas that make sense. So,
Sure.
Okay. Anything else from the public on that? Anything else from the board? Okay, now take a motion to close the public hearing.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so I'll take a motion to take down the trees on 35 Vine.
There's one more tree, excuse me.
Okay.
Separate public
That's a
hearing.
It's a
Separate.
separate hearing, Tom.
Oh, that is it? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right, Linda, why don't you go ahead and make the motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the tree warden's recommendation to remove the Norway maple at 35 Vine Street and the Norway maple at 41 Vine Street.
Second.
Any other conversation? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right. And we'll work to make sure we follow up with the trees getting planted. Thank you. Okay, now we are on to number 4, which is James Mitchell's zoning.
No, we have
We
the,
gotta do 92.
the 92 School Street.
Why is this on?
This next tree.
Hang on. Where am I
Get
doing?
it, it's all wrapped in.
Did I hide it?
All right.
Oh, it says in Lincoln House.
Okay, that's it. All right, sorry. I'll take a motion to open the public hearing. We've got to do better on this organization, on this agenda, because I'm not
So
following
moved.
it. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So now we are opening up the request for Lincoln Ave, School Street,
2 schools.
School. 30-inch sugar maple.
Yeah, this is a large, mature sugar maple tree that has extensive decay, at least going to the center of the tree on the Lincoln Ave side. And the top of the tree has been pruned by us on many times. it's really a one-sided tree. All the weight and lean is towards the owner's property, and they have a lot of concerns about it going towards them, or if any more comes out of it. Every storm, there seems to be a piece comes out of this tree. So my recommendation would be to remove it, and I think there again, they would maybe like 2 nice small trees on the street. And we will contact them, or I'll have the Friends of the Trees contact them.
Any other comments from the board? Any comments from the public?
I am Brian Miller, 92 School Street. The tree is actually on Lincoln Avenue, and if there was an address, it'd be 1, but there isn't no address there. Now, this tree is, we love the tree, we wish it could stay, but even the good part is dying off and major branches are falling off. I took out, during one of our minor hurricanes, it closed School Street for 16 hours right at the beginning of the storm because it took out the wires and live wires in School Street. It's been pruned numerous times by the town, and now literally you can get 12 by 12 pieces of bark just by touching the tree and pulling it off with your hand. So unfortunately, it needs to go. Thank you.
Maybe while the owner's here, he'd be interested in some trees.
Most likely, the other large maple on that lot, I planted 30 years ago.
Okay, no other comments? Okay, I'll take a motion then to close the public hearing. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now I'll take a motion. Martha?
I make a motion to accept the tree warden's recommendation and remove the tree located at 92 School Street / 1 Lincoln Avenue.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, good, we're done, thank you. Okay, Jim, now we're going to jump into our interview. I'm sorry I jumped in on that. If you want to come up and take a seat up front here, that would be great.
Grab a mic,
You want to grab a mic?
whichever one you want.
So, thank you for coming in and your interest on the zoning board of appeals.
Thanks for having me.
So what we typically do is we just ask people to tell us a little bit about themselves, their background, why they're interested in the position, and then we'll ask a couple questions, and then if you have any questions for us.
Great, okay. My name is James Mitchell. I live at 338 Summer Street here in town. I've been a resident for 20 years, and I was, in my previous career, a contractor for 25 to 30 years. I've built about 150 homes in my career, as well as a bunch of commercial property construction as well. More recently, the last 14, 15 years, I've been a real estate agent, including having been a vice president at J. Barrett locally. The reason I'm interested in the zoning board, Board of Appeals, I think I bring a broad perspective of understanding about building, zoning, not so much zoning, but building, architecture, aesthetics, and I'm interested in giving back to the community.
Questions, board members?
So they meet, at least once a month, site visits. There needs to be a little flexibility in being able to attend those, different site visits. Usually they try to do them on Saturdays. So any time constraints you might?
No, I'm self-employed, so my schedule is my own.
Real estate agent, you said?
Yes,
You buy and sell properties or here in town?
I have. Most of my business is Essex County based. A large percentage of it is in Beverly. Also Salem, Manchester, Gloucester, all the local communities.
So that opens up a question for me about whether or not you sell properties to people in town if they come before the zoning board. You'd be in a position where you might maybe need to recuse yourself at that point.
Absolutely. The amount of business, I think in 15 years, I've sold 3 properties in Manchester, so it's pretty rare. Prior to living in Manchester, I lived in Beverly for 12 years. I was born and raised in Marblehead, so I'm pretty much a North Shore guy my whole life. I still go to church in Beverly. was very actively involved in the renovation of that historic structure several years ago. We did have a lot of issues with both building permits and handicap accessibility, egress. So I am familiar with both the building code and construction. But as far as any conflict of interest here locally, certainly if there was a conflict of interest or even a perceived conflict of interest, I would recuse myself.
Just following up on Eli's question, and I'm thinking hypothetically, I think the way that Eli probably is thinking, so we've never met, so I'm not thinking of anything specific to you, but nonetheless, in thinking of the interests of the town, buying or selling a property in Manchester is one thing, but given how much business you do on the North Shore, especially in commercial, and the town interested in more commercial development, how should the town be thinking about this if there are parties that are coming for commercial development that you have relationships in other towns? Whether or not a transaction takes place in Manchester, there's an implication from the business that you do in surrounding towns, if the majority of your business is surrounding towns.
Well, hopefully I can answer that. I don't really do any commercial real estate. It's all residential. Most of it is single family and condos. It's pretty basic homeowner type stuff. So the commercial project I was involved in at First Parish Church, it's just the church where I go. I've been a member there for 25 years.
So what would you do, again, I don't know, there's not, absolutely nothing specific to you, just thinking out loud, you know, if it's not commercial, what if it's a developer of residential properties? How would the town deal with this, in your opinion? What do you think would be fair? Do you see what I'm saying?
I don't really see
if I'm buying up residential properties in aggregate, and I start buying up properties in Manchester, and we've done business together from a business standpoint in other towns, and I start being interested in Manchester and you're on the board, how does this work? Or how does the town, more importantly, manage this situation?
I think, again, to repeat myself, if there were any perceived conflict of interest, I would simply recuse myself. I don't have relationships with a number of developers. I don't do commercial work. I think the instance which you cite hypothetically is it's probably highly improbable.
That people would buy multiple...
Or that I would know people who are buying multiple properties.
I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm trying to protect the town.
No, I get it. I totally get it.
I assume you would recuse yourself of a knowing situation. I'm thinking more of the implications of the town and the situation by moving you onto the board. We're assuming our responsibility here as much as you are. So.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. I think when it comes to zoning board decisions, it really comes to the letter of the law, the interpretation of the law. Typically, it's side and rear setbacks, it's views, protecting views, things like that. I did have an appearance before this board many years ago when my neighbor wanted to build an addition, and he was building a non-conforming. It required a special permit. So I'm fully aware of some of the conflicts and some of the kind of nettlesome issues that may come up. I would consider myself as a builder, fair, and certainly also aesthetic considerations need to be taken into view. I've worked with architects all my life, so I'm very familiar with the process of construction, but first and foremost, I'm a citizen, and I'd want to do what was fair, and it really would have no bearing on any of my business dealings.
With the zoning, with the bylaws, the zoning bylaws, would you, as you said, you know, we all want to apply common sense and aesthetics, but when it comes to the bylaws, you know, there really is not a lot of wiggle room to those.
Well, that's good.
And, yeah.
Makes the decisions easier.
Absolutely. And that's, are you familiar with any of the bylaws other than the one that
I
you said
haven't
you
read the
came
current
for?
zoning bylaws, so that would be something I'd have to get up to speed on. This would be the first time I've served in any community capacity.
Well, the biggest question I typically, or comment I like to make is that there are definitely decisions that come up that can be contentious. And would you have any problems with having to make tough decisions that your next door neighbor might not like?
I totally understand and respect that that might happen. I would also tell you that I'm a skilled negotiator. I've sold over 350 homes. Not all deals are easy deals, and I'm not unfamiliar with conflict when it comes to differing opinions, and in the end, we want to do what's fair for all parties so that everybody wins. But first and foremost, I'd be a representative of the town and interpreting the bylaws in a fair and just way.
Okay, any questions for us?
My understanding is that this is an alternate position, that there are 7 members with 5 regular members and 2 alternates. So I guess there'd be kind of a growing period or an introductory period of, a year or so or whatever is appropriate. And I kind of like that idea. A little bit worried about being thrown into the fire without.
Understandable.
Yeah. I should also mention I know Tom Kehoe. And he'd be the first person to tell you that I was a student of his. Excuse me, in 1970. So we go way back. I'm also Larry Kirby's next door neighbor. He's a great guy. I know he was very involved with the town many years ago. But I have a couple of friends here in town.
Yes, so Greg, the alternate position, is that a year appointment, or what's the term on the alternate?
This is, no, this is 3 years. Yeah.
So I'll get you from the
Absolutely. Great.
All right, any other questions?
No, I'm all set unless you have any other questions for me. Do you vote on this? Do you make a decision?
You will make the decision if you'd like. So thank you for your time again for doing that, and I will make a motion from the board.
I'll make a motion to appoint James Mitchell to a 3-year alternate position. Is that how it should be worded? Yes. On the zoning board of appeals.
Very good. Is there a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Good.
You're in.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I guess I'll look to you to find out when the first meeting is.
Yes, actually, you'll be in touch with Sonia. You've got to get sworn into your position, and you'll go from there. Okay?
Great.
Sounds great.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Of course. Great, we appreciate it. Thank you. All right, Bion, come on up. I know. We have a very nice-
How's it going, Bion?
Careful what you wish for, Brian.
Bion Pike, Manchester Harbor, Mass, resident from far away.
You're gonna need a new boot. Before the winter comes, you're gonna need another boot.
I'm the second person to comment on my boot today. I would like to point out that these boots are extremely comfortable at this point, and it will be a while.
Well
Duct
broken
tape.
in, are they?
Duct tape is
This
great.
is a duct tape situation.
Yeah.
That new cooling system?
All right, Bion, well, we have had the great fortune to read your report. I think everybody's had a chance to review that, so. But I think I'd love this to be a discussion, and for the record, just an update, maybe a quick summary of your report, so everyone can really understand that who's watching. And then I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the.
Sure. So I guess the first thing I should point out is that the deputy that the town agreed to fund is through his training period, and I can already see benefit. I am able to accomplish some things that I haven't been able to accomplish for a couple, 3 years, largely administrative, important things, making sure that all the revenue gets to come in and that sort of thing. So very happy about that and very hopeful going forward. Visiting voters, it was a busy summer, busiest yet in July and August. And I think that's going to be an important topic for the town before the next season starts. And what I'm talking about really is the visiting transient voters from neighboring communities. I like to, when people ask me how the season went, I like to say that I measure it by the number of property damage incidents and personal injuries that occur. This was not a great year, particularly at the end of August, going into September. We had a number of severe injuries and groundings and boat damage. Crocker's Boatyard was very busy hauling damaged boats at the end of the summer on weekend days. And if you think of it just in sheer numbers, it's not a surprise. If you have more and more boats, you're going to, that percentage of damage and personal injury is going to happen. And lots of projects going on. The repair to the wall at Masconomo, where we're hopefully going to shore things up and make them last a lot longer. And the expansion of Reed Park is ready to go out to bid. And we have the first hydrographic survey, or the hydrographic survey for the next round of dredging. Sorry, don't shoot the messenger. But this is the beginning of the 5, 6, 7-year process that we know we will experience before we get around to seeing large pieces of equipment come in. And also, as I've stated on several occasions, you all know the Tux Point floats are non-compliant. Haven't been since 1896. And the Army Corps of Engineers could tell us to remove them tomorrow. I really think they're inclined to do that if they think a community is moving forward with dealing with those issues. So we are dealing with that issue.
Do you want to talk a little bit about bow and stern?
Oh, of course, and that's in there. So, as you all know, we've gone to bow and stern moorings inside the drawbridge, and there was a lot of initial concern about that, and it was approached with great trepidation by many. The good news is that over the course of the summer, the vast majority of these boaters out here have come forward to say, this is great. We actually can get in and out of the inner harbor safely. And we can raise our outboards out of the water without concern of damaging a neighbor and having some big insurance claim. We have one out in Area 4, unfortunately, a boat damaged another, and that's probably going to be several $1,000s. So, given the success in here, I am proposing that we extend the bow and stern to the area in front of Crocker's Boatyard, Area 3, on that side of the channel, and then out past Norton's Point, Whittier Cove on that side of the channel. And part of the goal there in Whittier Cove will be to take the smaller center console boats that are in Proctor Cove, move them over there, move the bigger sailboats over to the other side, so that when we think about this next dredging project that's coming, we can dredge just the Proctor Cove side and not have the expense of needing to do both to accommodate deep draft vessels on both sides. So we save there. And then when we do dredge on the Whittier Cove side of the harbor, we don't have to go as deep, and we save there. So I think the bow and stern is the right way to go to continue trying to bring order to the harbor and save money in future dredge projects.
Are the bow and stern lines, are those the new eelgrass kind of?
You know, that's different. So
Okay.
all the moorings in the inner harbor, basically, say Yacht Club Inn, are the traditional block and heavy chain. We have organic silt down there. There's a spot over deep in Proctor Cove where there was eelgrass 100 years ago, literally 100 years ago. But it's mostly organic matter. No eelgrass grows. You need sandier bottom for the eelgrass.
What about over by Long Beach? is that, but isn't there eelgrass over by Long Beach?
Yes.
Okay.
Quite a lot of it.
A lot. So it's part of one of the largest meadows of eelgrass in Massachusetts. It goes from here in Manchester all the way down to Salem,
Holy smokes.
right down along the shore.
Wow.
We had a very bizarre appearance by the Port Authority a few years back where they were going to pay for putting in new moorings. The long explanation of why it happened, I'll tell you sometime.
Okay.
Ask a purely technical question, it's a little bit of a waste of time. The bow and stern moorings in heavy storms, do you take the stern line off and let them point up, or do you hold them?
No, one of the things that you have to do when you go with bow and stern moorings is have heavy enough moorings, both bow and stern, to deal with a beam wind, a wind blowing on the side of the boat. And that's part of what you have to do.
Huh.
So
Wow.
it requires heavier tackle.
Yeah.
Some people said to me, well, we'll just put a little small one on the stern. That's not how bow and stern works. Up in Ogunquit, Maine, in Perkins Cove, you ever go up there and visit MC Clark or one of the places in there for lunch or dinner, you look at the lobster boats in there. And the way Ogunquit does it is they run 2-inch battleship chain across the harbor.
The spring line.
Exactly, and then they have the mooring chain goes down, bow and stern, and that's how the town pays for that. They build the cost of maintaining that into the mooring fees. There are different ways to deal with it, but block and chain is the way we do it.
Brian, can you comment on staffing? I know that you had a new person, and it sounds like it went well. My observation is that you're still not staffed properly. When you factor on a summer day, the inner harbor to the yacht club as one area of patrolling, because more and more boats are actually coming into town and docking and tying up, and you've got all the traffic in the harbor, within the deeper harbor. You've got the yacht club to basically the end of the Manchester Channel before town line start, including the Sandower Cove situation, which we'll wait for. Then you've got a whole nother set of, I'll call them liabilities in your case, of Kettle Cove, which is mushroomed as a destination spot. And then you've also got Magnolia in front of the beach club, Bath and Tennis Club, as an area that you're responsible for. So I don't really understand how today you're able to address all of that. Certainly with one person, now two, still the math doesn't seem to work in terms of the town, not just your job being achievable, but the town's responsibility or liability there.
That's really the key point right there. You know, we've operated with one boat on weekends right up until the end of July this year. So there, for me, I feel quite a deal of stress reduction having the second boat out there. However, when you have 250 boats, or as on Labor Day, 300 boats at Long Beach, and as you said, the traffic coming in and out of the harbor, and what goes on over at Masconomo and Reed Park as far as boats tying up, I try not to think about that. Just like I try not to think about what's going on at Black Beach, 100 boats there on Labor Day. That was also record-setting, at least for my tenure. If I believe what I'm told, there's never been anything like it over there. And it's really unsafe. I had a call from a woman who lives up in Magnolia today. She said it's just terrifying to try to go in there because if you try to make your way into the harbor and you're coming around boats, there's people swimming. And people on rafts floating off the sterns of their boats. It is right now not well managed. Poorly managed, I would say.
So, that said, what I'm interested in is understanding and some of the strategies that we talked about in terms of managing it better, but also understanding what are the intentions you need in order to make them happen. Because I think it's a double, sort of a double-edged sword. You've got to be able to manage it better by maybe restricting some of some strategies, but also having the staff to work through it. So what are you thinking?
Right, so if we think back to the last time this issue came up a couple of years ago when we hit that 200 number for the first time, my thought was that we put day transient use moorings out in front of the two Ram Islands, 20 of them that could accommodate 5 boats each. That's 100 boats in nice straight lines with good sight lines. Easy for a patrol boat to go down back and forth in front of that. 100 is what I think of as the manageable number. You go beyond 100 and all of a sudden it starts to become something else. Now, it could be a few more if it were laid out. And what that would require is that there be no more anchoring at Long Beach. And that was the sticking point last time for residents who go over there and like to anchor right underneath Gales Point or in front of the beach over there. Folks want to be over there. It's sandy, it's warm, it's an opportunity to get out and walk around on the low tide. I understand the appeal, but it's not the same as it was 7 summers ago when there were 25 boats over there, 20 of them residents. And I could look over there and it was an afterthought. I could spend the time patrolling the inner harbor. I could go up to Black Beach and deal with the 30 boats from Danversport that were there. So that it would be one way to manage this. The town could install these moorings. A person, any boater who's paid for a waterway fee to Manchester could access those moorings, first come, first serve. So obviously, everyone who has a boat in Manchester pays a waterway fee. We would collect from visiting boaters that don't. It would be like launching at the ramp. You can pay for the day. You could pay for a sticker that would go on the stern of your boat. Doesn't guarantee that when you get here there'll be a mooring for you, or that you might already have 5 friends here and that mooring's full. So
I think from a safety standpoint, we really have to do something because, as you said, the incidents that occurred, and most of those were high wake, was it?
So the major injury at Misery Island was boat wake. And that was the week before Labor Day. On Labor Day itself, the boat that nearly sank at Misery Island and the damage to that vessel, and the Salem Harbor Master boat that showed up was due to wake.
There it is.
Bless you. So, boat wake, I unfortunately had one of our boaters who has a mooring in Area 6 across from the yacht club tell me it's just awful. If there's nobody there patrolling, he fell off his boat twice this summer because of boat wake. And then the traffic coming in and out of our harbor was identified as the main cause of the problem at Misery Island for boat wake. It's so bad that Salem and Beverly harbor masters want us all to sit down and see if there isn't some solution for all of Manchester Bay. So there'll be lively discussion on both sides about this. I have been contacted by a number of folks already on both sides. This time, more on we need to get this under control rather than we can't restrict residents from this activity.
And the Black Beach, same with that, put moorings in there and,
That would certainly be a solution.
If you do any restriction to Sand Dollar Cove, you're going to have a flood at Black Beach.
Right. So we're going to, once we start restricting one area, that's exactly what's going to happen. White Beach, Singing Beach, Graves Beach, and Magnolia will all see an increase in day transient boaters anchoring. And then one of the other things that happens is the anchoring close to the beach. State law says 150 feet. There's the other law that says ancient colonial right. I can come in and navigate and fish and foul, and that is a real challenge for somebody trying to keep boats off the beach. My argument is, when this law was instituted in 1632, there were no center console boats with spinning propellers. And if you go to the beach in a car, you don't want somebody parking their car next to you. You sure don't want somebody driving their boat in right next to your child in the water and anchoring in the swimming area. But that ancient colonial law is a real challenge. So that's something that I'm actually discussing with the Mass Harbor Master Association to see if we can't get something done at the state level to put a little bit of common sense into these opposing laws.
Why aren't there, like there are at Singing Beach with the swimming markers, why don't we have those at Long Beach? I mean, I recognize it's private property, but still, don't we have a safety concern that we would want to?
We do. And the low tide mark is actually all the way out on the other side of that bar. So those no-wake buoys could be quite far out. And swimming buoys as well. The problem with the swimming buoys is that the people who understand the ancient colonial law will say, yep, the law says you can't come within 150 feet of a swimming buoy at anything greater than headway speed, and if you're inside and there's anyone on the beach, you can't run your engine at all, except there's this other law that says that I have the right to fish, foul, and navigate. And not everybody knows the law, but those that do press.
Well, navigate means
right.
someone wants to pass through. Yeah, you can pass through, but you can't sit there.
Right. Well, except that
unless you're
some
fishing or fouling.
Some arguments say that navigation includes anchoring.
Yeah. So I guess there seems like we've got a staffing question, and then we've got some sort of management question. I see them as related but separate. I still want to come back to the staffing issue. My personal opinion might be alone. I don't think you're staffed properly.
I'm not.
I think, in my mind, you should have somebody going back and forth, or the ability to go back and forth without obstruction from the inner harbor all the way out past the yacht club, effectively the channel. You really should have somebody going from House Island and covering all the way to the Bath and Tennis Club. And then you almost need somebody, a third person, and maybe, I think we've talked about, it may not be a full boat, because I do keep cost in mind as we talk about these things. But someone needs to be patrolling the volume within Sand Dollar Cove, because if you're responding to an emergency, or you're drawn into Masconomo, and you have to abandon the area of Sand Dollar Cove, and somebody is patrolling from House to the Bath and Tennis Club and is responding, you're all of a sudden, flying blind with Sand Dollar Cove. And somebody whose real responsibility is to just manage that area in terms of speed and safety of swimmers in particular.
That actually, I think that exact thing happened the day before. One of the incidents that I talked about in here, the boat with the 10 people on it. I was actually patrolling the inner part of the harbor, and my deputy Paul was in Area 7. And the way we would do that is we would pull the boat from the inner harbor out to Area 7. The boat in Area 7 would go up and do the pass-through just to be the presence and come back down, and then we could patrol that inner harbor again. But the moment we got that call, since we're one person on a boat, both boats went. And I pulled the boat off and started to try to deal with the boat that had gone aground and was sinking. And Paul dealt with getting the most grievously injured folks off and into the yacht club, while I was in contact with dispatch and Crockers to get the boat into Hall. So
What time of day was this?
this was 2:00 in the afternoon.
So you have
We had
200
nobody.
boats at Sand Dollar Cove at that point?
Yeah, we had 200 boats. We had, at that point, nobody was going up to Magnolia. Nobody was in Area 7,
Well, you just have 200 boats in Sand Dollar Cove alone.
right, maintaining. And then, of course, the inner harbor. So I think a lot of the, in here in downtown could be managed with a person at the dock. The biggest problem at the dock is that it's a free-for-all. People come in, they tie up for far longer than the extremely generous 1 hour that you folks have provided for boaters here for years. And believe me when I tell you that is generous.
Well, it's 15 minutes in Marblehead.
Right.
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 Right. That's normal. So folks come in, and if they can't find a spot, they'll raft up, and they'll raft up, and they'll raft up. And then they'll overwhelm the fishermen's pier. So our fishermen come in, and these boats tie up so sometimes they can't even get to the pier. And having somebody at Reed Park managing the boat traffic there, and with a megaphone or whatever it takes to keep them off the fishermen's pier, so that's useful, would work. Wouldn't need a boat for that, wouldn't have to have a boat for that.
So can I make a suggestion?
Mhm.
We look at these things from the perspective of problem solving. right?
Yes.
We understand the issue that we're trying to solve for relative to those three pieces around management, around personnel, and around sort of equipment or whatever it might be that we need. Loans and that kind of thing. Realistically so, we're at a good time because we're about to launch into our budget season.
Right.
So mindful that this may be somewhat of a phased-in process, but I think there's enough here and enough concern to say we need to address something in this budget season around this. So perhaps we can task you and Greg to look at this, and then, because you see, you have a strategic view, you understand the applicability, it's not just one thing that we can do. Do some problem solving, come back with a plan and some budget numbers around it, and we'll see what we can do.
I have some ideas.
There's one other area I would recommend we add, which is enforcement, which we haven't talked about, because I'm not convinced because you yell at somebody that someone's going to do what you say.
Right. So, because yelling is not the most effective means, it doesn't mean it doesn't happen. It's the education piece. And you know, the truth is that 99.9% of the boaters in Manchester, they observe the no-wake zone. They observe the things that we need people to comply with to make sure it's safe. It's the visiting boaters. And 85% of the folks who've come here for years, they're pretty good. They understand when they come here that they have to observe. But that other 15% with the burgeoning numbers is just a bigger and bigger number. And those are the folks who don't care. They come back and they repeat offend. So the enforcement piece is starting to, it's becoming apparent that we need to start being more aggressive with enforcement. And we've given the education piece long enough. So now it's time to write some tickets. That doesn't always modify behavior. I'm of the school that a lot of these people who are repeat offenders, you write them the ticket, they're going to get their money's worth next time. They're not. So I will tell you that I have invited people, since I can't tell them they may not, but there are two voters from other communities that I've invited not to come back here. Don't come back here unless you can operate your boat in a manner that doesn't put all of these other people at risk.
And have they?
They haven't been back. They haven't been back, which is a shame. Just come back and don't
Well,
put
but if
other
they
people at
can't.
risk.
But I think to Arthur's point, there's other tools needed for enforcement and understanding.
Exactly.
Or however that needs to come forward.
Yeah.
Let's understand this as well.
Yeah. The relationship with the police department is great. And there are experienced boaters in this town's police department.
Well, not everything has to be a ticket. I mean, and again, this may not be a reasonable example, but for the overcrowding at the dock, do you actually force people to leave their keys like you do at a valet? And we're not going to do a valet service, don't get me wrong. But, you either shorten the time that people can tie up,
Yeah.
and even in doing that, because people may just blow off the 15-minute rule, right? In Marblehead, what they do is they take a screwdriver and run it across the side of the town doesn't, but the fishermen do, because they did it to someone's boat that I saw. We don't want that happening either.
No, we
But,
don't.
if you shorten the
No, we
time,
don't.
do we have, somebody on an early summer job who's actually holding the keys for people, so that if you do go over, we reserve the right to move your boat to a place that's out of the way. So that, again, I don't know if this is a reasonable suggestion, but my point is, not everything needs to be ticketing. Like, are there other creative ways to problem solve around some of these different locations?
Right.
Could we use someone, how Parks and Rec has people watching the beaches? Could something like that be
At
done?
Reed Park.
Yeah.
That's what I really envision there. The whole moving of boats thing, the town would have to have good insurance.
Yeah, I wouldn't
Again,
want
I'm
to touch
not,
anybody's
I'm not
boat.
suggesting it as a reasonable, but I'm just saying not everything needs to be
Right.
ticketing. Like,
Right.
Is there
No,
another?
I'm not much of a ticketer. I don't write a lot of tickets. I write more parking tickets than I do anything. I call them parking tickets. But frankly, I just don't have, for me to come in and use the time that I have to say you're naughty, you tied up too long, that's down here when I'm thinking about Area 7 and people's safety.
Well, I think to your point, having somebody there to do that.
Yeah.
And-
Exactly.
And similar to what we do here, I think, well, is there an opportunity to get an intern who's in harbor masters?
Right.
I don't know, whatever.
There
We're
is.
saying those are
There
things,
is.
Using leverage of teachable people that need experience, whatever, and bring folks in to do things like that. So I think we should leave you to come up with some ideas
Okay.
for us. I think generally we know kind of where we're coming from, and I look forward to following up. And it'd be great to connect with you in mid-November, I would say the latest, if not earlier, whatever you're ready. But from foundational, from the budget process, we want to make sure we get
Mhm.
Any
So,
other questions?
so I know I don't want to continue the conversation, but we didn't unpack the specifics of Sandell Cove, which I have fine that we don't, but there's a recommendation, he also comes back with a recommendation
Yes,
specific to
I
that?
consider
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that's going to involve, to your point, the community outreach, the sessions that we need to have. What's the plan for that?
When do we want that by?
November?
So do you have time to have public input by then?
I think so.
Okay.
I do. I will, my opinion is this is probably going to be a big enough deal that it would probably, somebody would want it to come up at town meeting. What we're going to do, but I think that the passions will run that deep.
Well, I think framing it up from a perspective of engaging the community, I think framing up the recommendations that you're going to make, talking to as many people as you can, and the feedback and ideas, seeing what you can do around that money, and working with local funds. But I think the whole point about engaging the community now, you know who the folks are. I think working with the state is really important, and where we can leverage, the mass flood interest Manchester folks to help out. But, I think in general, it's coming together with a plan that you feel comfortable, you're getting the support you need from the town. Our liabilities are managed and covered to the best of our ability. And, we're spending responsibly.
Right.
So, I'm just going to go over it, being responsible. Okay, anything for us, Dennis?
I don't think so. I think that this was more than enough.
Okay.
But thanks for your, I should say thanks for your support.
You've done a great
You,
job.
Bion. Thank you.
Really.
Good. All righty then. Excellent. Okay.
Thank you,
Have a good
Bion.
night.
Thanks, Brian, drive safe.
Safe drive.
Take care.
Bye.
All right, town meetings, articles. Do we want to sign these, or do we want to sign them at the end? We can do that. We just want to run through them. Oh, we're
So-
signing.
Yes. So the first one is the Finance Committee from 9 to 7. So it's need someone to take the lead on that in terms of moving the article and seconding, and then brief explanation.
I can do that.
Who would like to second it?
I'll do the second. That one I can handle.
We're not at chiggers, but, yeah. Okay. Article 2?
What I just said I would,
Oh, you're saying you're doing Article 2?
I said I would do Article 2.
Okay, sorry, I thought you were seconding the first one.
no.
Okay,
But I'll-
Article 2. So Becky's doing Article 2.
I can second yours. You need the formal seconds.
Oh, you need, okay.
You got second Article 1? Yeah. Got it. So Article 2, the motion is Becky, seconded by Arthur.
Sure.
Yeah.
Which one is it?
Article 2, snow ban removal. Now, Article 3, I want to talk about this a little bit, because I think we have to be really smart in what we're doing on this in terms of the comments. I'm happy to make them, but I'm also not wedded that I have to be the person to do that. So if anybody feels strongly about comments, or if you want to do joint comments, or whatever it is, I'm happy to accommodate or whatever. So I just want to know that it's a big, obviously, important article for the schools, and we want to make sure that we represent what the board feels strongly about, and it up, so.
Oh, and Lori's going to speak as well.
I just want to, and this is, bring up the comment Greg made about in 5 years, a Cape Ann neutralized system.
The what?
Yeah, but, so,
Cape Ann regional as opposed to,
I think, I don't want to get into that discussion about.
I know, it's kind of a little, but
At this point, yeah, so.
It's intriguing.
It's intriguing and it's an idea, and I had conversations with Lisa O'Donnell today. We're going to be meeting jointly with the board of ethics and starting the conversations about shared services. And I personally do not want to muddy the waters right now with that conversation. I think we've got a school in front of us that we need to address and deal with now. Things will change dramatically over the next 10 years. This may be a discussion that will happen even sooner than that, but I don't know, that's just my personal opinion. So I'm open to, how do you want to frame this up? So first off, who wants to motion and second the article for the school?
They will do that.
They will do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so who wants to speak? Anybody?
Susan Beckman, maybe?
I'm happy to, I just want to make
I
sure
don't want
that
to put
this,
myself in that
do you want to
position.
speak, Eli?
Do I want to speak? I will speak if somebody wants me to speak. Do I have a burning desire to take the lead on this one? No?
How about you, Arthur?
I like Eli's phrasing. Can't say that I feel that differently about it. I will speak. I think of, I don't know whether I can say this or not. I think I've been the most conflicted about it. I voted to support it. I still support it. I stand behind. I think if it's going to cost 40 million versus 36 million, what's 4 million? So I get it, especially having gone to that school. I continue to have concerns about the town, not the school. I think the project as defined is a good one. My concerns are not with the merits of the proposal, and my concerns are with and it's not that I don't have confidence. It's an unknown, and it's a large chunk of money, and I don't want to go down this whole discussion again. So, but
So,
if I speak, I feel obliged to voice that. So I'm just saying that.
What I'm suggesting is, I think unless there's a burning desire, if I was going to speak to this, I would want that input, and I would want whatever comments that I make representative of the board. So happy to co-sponsor, co-write, co-whatever, co-deliver if you so choose to do that. We can do that together. But I want to make sure that that's covered, because I think it's an important point that we need to make as a leadership of the town.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be misinterpreted in what my position is. It's not a middle of the road position. I stand behind supporting the school. How we pay for it is an entirely different question. So I just don't want the subtlety of my position confusing people. Not that people aren't smart enough, people are plenty smart enough. It's just, I don't know if in the emotion of the room, whether people are really going to process where I'm coming from. Because I don't view it as a particularly emotional position that I have. I view it as a very raw, pragmatic. I think of the long-term interest of the town. What we spend on is a widget. It happens to be a school. It's not a question of the merits of the school for me.
I understand that, but I think
the processing of a dollar amount and mathematically how we do it. And I also don't want to open a can of worms publicly in any sort of misinterpretation of my lack of belief in our ability to do it, because I think we can do it. I just don't know if, in all honesty, whether or not this board and the FinCom truly have a definitive path forward for standing behind this proposal the way that we are.
For doing, would you say that last, for doing what?
If you want my honest
No,
assessment.
I just want your last sentence.
Yeah, well, it's an
I
honest
missed that one.
assessment of where we really are combined with FinCom in truly having a clear path forward in terms of figuring out how to pay for all this. So I'm not saying we can't. I think we can. We've got a lot of smart people. It's just whether or not we've coalesced between the two boards on a definitive path forward. I'm not sure we have. Again, it's a matter of time before we do. I just don't know whether the timing, and nothing's perfect in this world. So is it unreasonable that we're in the position we're in? Absolutely not. It's a very difficult thing to work through. It's just, can I say with definitive certainty on both fronts, supporting the school and then also feeling definitively confident about how we're going to do it? I don't know if I can.
Well, and I don't think we're there yet, but I think we're on a path.
That, I agree with
To get
that.
there. So I agree. And so I think.
But that's a very, knowing the emotion of the room
Yes.
and the stakeholders who will be there, you have to be very careful on how you explain that position, if that's the case, because people are going to misinterpret it potentially as you support the school, but you don't know how the town can pay for it. That's the negative view of that.
Yeah, but I think you can be positioned in a way, and I'm very confident in delivering a message positioned in a way that says, we support the school, we understand the need, we think it makes good fiscal sense. We're in the process of.
Well, that part I
building-
don't, that part, I don't know if we.
Well,
We understand the need.
We understand the need.
We understand the proposal. We think it's a good decision for the
Good
town.
decision for the town, okay. And that, in order for it to make good fiscal sense, we are now going down the path to look at how to fund this and how to, and we can work on the words of that, but I think the point that I'm trying to make is that we can craft a statement that is clear and concise, gives the information, accounts for the concerns, it's saying that we're not there yet, but being clear that we know it and we're moving towards it. And you've got some of our fiscal policies and a few of these other things that are coming together. We're not there yet, but I think we're aware that we're on our path to it. So I don't want to have people misinterpret that we're not behind it, which is what you're saying, because we're saying that. So it has to be crafted very carefully.
Plus, the residents will, they approve this in a couple of weeks. We still have opportunities well beyond that point to weigh in on how exactly we go about paying for it. They're going to be, we have a number of different assets that we can use for this, either all debt exclusion or using reserves for some of it. These are all decisions that the residents can and should be part of over the next year before the bills start to actually come due.
So what was the end result of the last finance committee? What position are they taking? What explanation are they giving at town meeting for funding? Or have they not come to that conclusion? Because I thought at their last meeting, when there was confusion around whether we were joining them or not, that they were going to make their decision about how they were going to present or represent the funding model. Did they not do that?
Yes?
They
So
did.
it's a-
They did.
They did do that.
Okay. I know I've
So-
read and reread and read, and so, yes, they have chosen their funding model. But they are going to recommend.
Their funding model is to follow those four principles,
Yep.
plus the cash basis
Yep.
capital. They want the authority to 100% debt exclude, but they will pursue aggressively not fully utilizing that authority each year.
So in other words, they haven't made up their mind.
They haven't made up their mind.
Yeah.
So is it logical
Well,
that,
I disagree with the fact that they haven't made up their mind. They are asking for broad authority. They believe the wisest path is to have the flexibility, but their preference is not to use it. And they will push hard not to use that full authority.
So that means they would advocate for dipping into reserves for paying some of the bill.
Reserves or less conservative on the fund balance, on the local receipts, and pursue new growth, that multi-pronged plan.
Just to understand checks and balances, at the end of the day, they will always make the recommendation. We're the ones who have to actually approve that.
Yeah, and then the voters have to say, and the voters can change that configuration in that town meeting, right?
Well, I guess
I
that's what
I do agree, I mean, no offense, Greg, but I agree with Eli. Like, they haven't put a plan forward. They preserved the independence to use different vehicles that they will, at some point in the future, determine best for the interest of the town. But we haven't said that it's going to be 30% cash reserve, 70% debt at some hypothetical interest rate.
Right, I think you should do that. I think you should stand at a town meeting and say, here's the plan.
Yeah.
And I think short of doing that, the voters are going to hesitate and say, why are we voting on this?
I agree. It's
It's not
either,
criticism.
No, I'm not,
But I think what he was saying was
it's either we're in
true.
support of
I-
what the finance.
I tend to agree, but their position is a little different. But I think you should stand up and say, yeah, we're going to fund this with, I don't care what the percent you pick a percent, but pick a percent.
I think it's what people are expecting to hear. Because it's how.
If you want it 100%, say 100%.
What you wrote in the cricket was based on what assumption of 100% debt? That you calculate, you had the, whatever it was, $80, $74.
Right, that's assuming 100%.
That's assuming 100%. So
That's assuming 100%.
I think if we're putting that information out in the public, then I think we need to stand behind the message that's already been
So-
communicated.
So that's a worst case scenario.
But that's what people read, and not
No, I
everyone reads
understand.
not everyone reads the critic, I know that, but a heck of a lot of voters who go to town meeting read the cricket. So it's already, the seed's already been planted
So.
in terms of expectation.
Yeah, my feeling is this, to me, it's pretty clear. We're asking for 100% debt exclusion for this project. If we go through the next 3 years, as the bans start coming in and things start going, it's up to that 100%. And if we choose to fund it differently, we will make those decisions. We're not prepared to make those decisions yet. We're not there. And I think that if we do anything but other than keep this straightforward, and again, remember, October 15th is our chance to position this so it's ready for, that it gets on the ballot on the 6th, but that the voters come out and vote on it, so they've got a chance to weigh in. But our job in this meeting is to frame up what the leadership of the town and the finance committee believe to be the best resource at the given time that we've got. And right now, I think keeping it simple is up to 100%, and getting to the point where we can actually have that discussion about how we want to use the receipts and what we want to do with it would be great. We're not there today. We're October 1st, 14 days away from town meeting. We're not there yet.
Well, to push it further.
Then put off the vote.
But you got 2 weeks until the vote. I think we almost.
Shame on us for not
We
being
need
there.
to,
But why do
potentially, we
have
need to
be there?
adopt this
I don't-
tonight, actually. This is the last meeting
Yeah,
before the
but
vote.
what I don't understand, what do we have to adopt?
What you just said.
Which is what?
It's the underlying set of assumptions that go into what he's already written to the public that is already being communicated, which is that, and we can call it worst case. In worst case, this is 100% debt funded.
Right.
That needs to be explicitly said.
Oh, I understand that. That's what I'm saying.
But it
that's what
hasn't.
I'm saying. Well, but that's what we're talking about right now.
Oh, I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're violently agreeing.
Okay. Just want to make sure we're all agreeing on that. Okay, we're good there. We're good. Okay, fine.
I'm in the same spot. I mean, I tend to agree right at this point that the 100% debt is, and say that's our plan of action, and of course that can change in the future, but our plan of action is to do 100% debt exclusion. But I'll say that given what your explanation of FinCom's position is, they're not going to be agreeing with us up there. So if we craft that message and we put that out there, FinCom is going to say something different. And that is, we're asking for the authority to do 100% debt exclusion, but we don't think that's the right thing to do. That's the message that Greg just delivered to
But
us.
their message is also potentially, we don't agree with that, but we don't necessarily know what it is. I mean, if we're asking the town for $28 million, you've got to tell them what the heck you're talking about. I'm not talking to you, Eli, I'm
Yeah.
just saying, that's just not,
If you don't want to have some number less, then go with 100%.
That's my point. My
but
point
Eli's
is-
right.
What?
He's right.
FinCom's going to say
FinCom's going
something
to say
different.
something different.
The FinCom will also say, we agree with getting permission for 100%. We hope
But that-
to
I
not
don't
charge
see
you
that.
quite as much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't see that as being bad.
That would be
No.
fine.
I don't
If
think
that
that's-
happens, then nothing's bad, but we need, let's just make sure that we're all talking about the
Everybody's
same
on
thing.
Oh, I totally agree.
'Cause-
I totally agree. Well, that's one of the reasons why we're having another collaboration and discussion about this, but I think, so just to be clear, the positioning that I'm suggesting is that we say it's 100%, basically for the piece to be 100%, and that's what we funded. Understanding full well that the actual mechanisms in executing on that could change based on what the FinCom will look at in terms of budget, but we're assuming that it's 100%.
Being the worst case scenario.
Worst case
And I
scenario.
think that needs to be explained, that aspect of it, that this is, it,
I don't even think it's necessarily a worst case scenario. It's just a decision. It's a policy decision.
well, maybe not worst case scenario, but
We're prepared for
priciest.
100%.
Yeah.
And that if we can improve that situation based on a different scenario, that will be done.
But
So I
people-
think,
I think we need a statement that is adopted. And I don't know where the statement comes from, but we need to vote on that statement before we go to that meeting.
Yeah.
I don't know when we're meeting to vote on that statement.
So your two options are the Saturday pre-meeting or meet half hour, 45 minutes before the actual town meeting starts.
Or we can just craft it right now and
Or,
vote on it.
or have,
And hope that FinCom adopts it as well.
Well, we can share that with them and say, this is the position that we're coming at as a draft, and.
Then I'm not arguing, I'm not, I'm,
No,
I'm.
I know you're playing it through.
Yeah, so I don't think we, I
yeah.
wouldn't vote on that if it's a draft.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a very productive conversation because I don't think we can go to town meeting with vagueness, which
See,
is.
I guess I was assuming we weren't going big. I thought we were going really
Well,
quick, that it was 100%
think-
that we were asking for. So I guess where I get lost is on the vagueness. I think the vagueness is how, and you know what, in deference to this, none of us were at the table other than Greg to hear what the FinCom had to say.
Well, that was possibly an error.
Well, we tried that, this whole thing was, anyway, we're gonna take a step back. Here's what I'm gonna propose. We'll write up a statement that covers what we're talking about here. Have a conversation with the collaboration meeting, which we're having Friday or Monday or Tuesday next week,
Friday or Tuesday.
Friday or Tuesday. And then on the 13th, are people gonna be here on the 13th for the pre-town meeting?
I'm supposed to work, but I can try and, what time is the pre-town meeting? You said? Nine?
9 on Saturday.
His business will be, Alan's business,
Nine
part of
to-
it will be short.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, his section will be pretty quick. I mean,
Okay.
The
So,
mechanics are
and
pretty
I'll be there at
straightforward.
9, I will have to leave probably.
That's fine,
Yeah.
we won't be long, but I
Yep.
think that should be the plan, is that we
Yep.
craft this, have the conversation with the collaboration team, have the meeting on the 13th, which we should post, so that we can take a vote on the actual language that we're gonna use for that. And we'll have everything written up and ready to go, and everybody will have a chance to look at it and go from there. Does that make sense? Not so much, Arthur? You have a look on your face like, yeah.
I'm just saying. It looks like you've eaten a prune.
Yeah.
We're gonna put it
Yeah, I'll try to be on the 13th. I have to check with my wife.
Okay. It'd be about a half hour.
Yeah,
But if not.
I don't know if it's just away that weekend.
Can we agree that that's a,
So I think your fallback would be to meet, at 6 o'clock on
No,
the 15th.
no. Think about the poor person who's writing up the comments if I were the one who was actually going to be presenting this on town meeting floor, and you said, hey, we'll make our final decisions and final vote on this the night of, and you can just pencil in whatever changes you need to the remarks, I'd say, I'm out. Like somebody else.
Monday morning, I don't know.
well, whatever, if we double check and just see, if not, I think we can frame this up and any changes that we would make, I think we can sort of minor. So, do we have a plan?
So in terms of crafting a draft, how do you want to proceed with that?
I think you and I should take a stab at it and send it out to people and have a look and get feedback before our collaboration meeting, so we can go and share it with them. So tomorrow, we'll figure something out and get out to them. Does that work?
Thank you.
All right. Did we beat
When
the
did you
horse
say you
enough?
wanted, you're gonna,
I don't know. I think in this case, we hadn't beaten it enough.
All right, well, what else do we need to talk about?
No. There's no criticism. It's
Okay.
more concern. It's collective concern.
Yes, I hear you.
So just as part of the thing, as part of your mulling this over, I would expect someone to say, so my taxes are going to go up 9.5%, or 9%. If I got 6.5 plus a 2.5, that's 9%. What are you doing to me? And just be able to, I'm just being rhetorical.
That's fair.
So we just need to be prepared to address that.
Yeah.
If we're being very open, are we also prepared for any comments from the public about the health of the school operating budget? Because I think that's going to be fair game.
No, I agree.
I think that's part, but I think that's part of what the school needs to
I was gonna
address.
say that's a
You know, and I
school
think
issue,
that's, we certainly can, say that we have set precedent in saying what we think we can absorb as a town. And I think the school needs to.
So I think in that statement, it would be worthwhile, with that in mind, to also have a sentence or two or three, or as many as needed, that's very specific, not just about what our strategy is for funding, but also a reference to the assumptions we have about the school's operating management. Because that was in some of the fiscal principles that you had shared. And I think that, because if I were a taxpayer, the board or the town may point to the district, but the town is the one that funds the district, so I would then, as a taxpayer, look back to the town to say, I heard the school's response, but you're the ones that fund them. Why are you allowing funding to go to the school at that
Well,
rate?
I think the answer is town meeting votes
Yep.
on the budget. And
I'm
if
just
that's
being
something-
rhetorical.
Yes, I get it, yeah.
So I think by us putting in the statement that our assumption is that, budgets of all departments, including the school district, is seen as a budget within the town funding model. It's not a department, but it's the district. But from an operating budgetary standpoint, it's another department that all departments are expected to hold within the 2.5%.
So we'll get something out to everybody. We can take a look at it. All right? All right. Well, we sort of bled into the discussion of fiscal policy. Do you want to talk a little bit more about those? Greg, you want to review?
Well, I feel like guess I'd take questions on it, I guess. So the Finance Committee approved those four principles. They tweaked a couple of them from earlier versions. Didn't target specific uses of that stabilization free cash funding, except to say it should be for one-time uses. And the annual debt, a 10% cap, it was at 12 earlier. The others are pretty much as you had seen them.
So the annual debt was the one that caught my eye, down to 10 from 12. So that puts us in a position where we're instantly self-inconsistent.
So the new school could fall under that, it would be right at it. By the time you actually take on the full bonding,
10.3,
10.3.
yeah,
And then it'll quickly fall below 10 in a year or two.
okay. So the idea being that they might do something to bring it into conforming, so to use some reserves to pay that first year to prevent the debt from being in the 10.3 range. Because
Well-
in theory, if there's a policy, right, I mean, they ignore it for a year and like, oh no, it's okay this year. Like,
Yeah, their feeling was that it was, these are guidelines and, we're basically hitting it.
so let me ask this a different way. What was their reasoning behind dropping it from 12% to 10%?
There wasn't a lot of discussion about, the magic between the two. The 10 is more common in terms of what you see as policies that are formalized. You see 10 to 15, but more people are at the 10 than they are at the 15.
You know what I would like to see? I'm as an output from FinCon, I'd like to see a little write-up of why they took the position on the individual points as opposed to just giving us the final point. So these questions about 10% versus 12%, I'd like to see a little summary paragraph of what went into that decision as opposed to it just being an arbitrary decision.
Right, and that's really what a full-blown set of policies would do. It would
Yeah.
put a little more meat on these bones. But yes, I understand the point.
And so are these policies something that's going to be talked about at like town meeting, the specifics of these policies? I'd prefer to have that more detailed, write-up from FinCom before that happens.
At this point, the Finance Committee was not meeting prior to.
What's that?
FinCom is not planning to meet prior to town meeting.
Well, then I'll just say
have to.
bluntly that I don't
I mean,
want
they're gonna have
them
to
to
because of the
present
previous
this
discussion.
a final policy until, to a large body until they've, gone through that process.
Right, so, for the time being, we're not calling these policies, they're more principles that they're working
So,
towards.
yeah, so when this whole thing started around setting some guideposts, for lack of a better term, looking at some policy about this, the thought was is that we would get some general policies or concepts starting prior to budget season. And during the course of that budget season, as well as up into the beginning of the year, prior to town meeting, we would flush these out, get to the points of the what, when, and how, and all the different pieces, and really formulate this into a policy, not just guidelines. So I think I would prefer to call these principles, as you are stating, that are being used as working principles right now, which will be turning into policy through the course of the year of
Yeah.
something that we would look at addressing in April. I don't think it should be addressed in the October town meeting. Again, we're not ready for that. It's not a place where we want to compound the situation. We can talk about the fact that we're doing it, and it's a very important point to say that this is something we are looking at. It's a very important sub-point of our conversation, but I don't think we can do it justice between now and October 15th rather, to do that. So I would say that directionally, these are good. I agree with Eli, and I think we need to have some joint meetings and some joint discussions to really flesh these things out. And I don't think meeting separately when we're talking about fiscal policy is a good idea. And I don't know what happened the last round, if who was on first and who was on second, but going forward, if we're talking about policy, it should be a joint meeting.
Totally agree on all points.
So, is everybody okay with that? So, therein lies the fiscal policies. All right, good enough. Next, fire department update?
So I think, as all of you know, we have the chief's resignation. He originally had proposed a 90-day transition period, and we concluded jointly that that was not to everyone's best interest. So his last day will be this coming Friday. And we will proceed with bringing on board an interim chief, working with an individual who we've had before, and hoping that he can be on board come the end of October.
Won't we have to call him something other than chief, though?
May call him fire administrator. And so he has some commitments right now that he needs to follow up on and would be available towards the end of the month, so October 29th to be exact. In the meantime, we should think about what process we want to undertake in terms of the search for a new chief and what shape and form that will take. We don't need that decision this evening, but it's something we should tee up over the course of the next couple months.
Yeah, I think if we can put it as an agenda item for the 22nd, October second going with the community, but I think we should at least get, and maybe at that point you can have a couple of recommendations of search agencies or whatever that you might be able to, or suggestions.
Do we have an exit process for the chief in terms of collecting, documenting his views?
Yes, so he and I are sitting down at the end of the week, and I've asked him for his recommendations for what the department should be doing going forward, and comments on my management, et cetera.
So exit interview.
Yes,
And the staff is aware? or-
staff is aware. Yep, they were given a memo from him, or an email from him on Thursday.
And are they aware that will be naming an interim?
I have not communicated that yet. So I hope to by the end of the week.
Yeah, so I think just for consistency, it would be great to have that exit interview, make sure that the staff knows kind of what the next steps are. Before the next, sort of a transition. Anything else on that topic? I do want to thank the chief for his hard work over the last year and a half.
2 years, yeah.
He certainly has shipshaped the department in a lot of ways, and we really appreciate his support of our. Okay.
Yeah, no, you'd be hard pressed to find someone more versed in fire technique and training, and he brings a lot of skills to the table along those lines.
Okay, good. So, let's go back, we'll sign these at the end of the meeting, in the special town meeting warrant pieces. I think we had an outstanding piece on correspondence. Did you have a point on?
Yeah, so this particular item has brushed this board a few times over.
Which item?
Oh, the building inspector letter. Because residents have made requests to us regarding that particular business. And I guess this was the compromise was reached with the zoning board for variance that they obtained. And from my perspective, the various boards and administration of the town has been enormously patient with respect to allowing that business to reconfigure itself according to the agreement that was arranged with the zoning board. I think maybe it's getting a little bit too patient. This needs to be sorted out.
Bay is empty. I drove by.
Don't care about the bay. I care about the agreement that was made with the zoning board related to
And this I don't
what
know
they
about.
needed to do in order to make that bay available to them. And that was to reduce the number of vehicles on that lot to a fixed number. And we have asked in the past, are they in fact, running a business? The question's been brought up, are they running a business selling cars? Are those cars all registered? And I think we've reached a point where we need to get the details of that sorted out, find out what's really going on, and just have an end to it once and for all. This is just going on too long.
Did we ever get a response from the building inspector's letter?
I don't know that, right, as I sit here today. I know that he was working on that. I don't know. I believe so, but I don't know the details of that.
Well, I certainly echo Laura's suggestion here of identifying how we need to go after to ensure that whatever's happening with compliance is the agreement that we put forward with the zoning board. So whatever mechanism we can do to kind of put back and let us know, that would be great.
So the difficulty is that that requirement doesn't kick in until he has a certificate of occupancy, a certificate of completion. And so he's not to use that day. So there's been some abuse of that.
Yep.
So that's the rub.
Yeah. So the lesson for us is next time, we don't put the constraint on the end of the project, we put it on the front of the project.
I agree with that.
Is there no limitation to cars that are on a commercial property like that or property in town?
No.
Limitation to what purpose, right? So for example, if you
Well,
were in
for selling
fact
cars, yes,
storing
there's,
cars that were
that's not allowed. He doesn't have a license to sell cars.
One of the concerns that I've had is if he's, if they're in there for long-term storage, I don't want a Superfund site next to a stream, right?
So do you have a path forward on that that you can look into, Greg?
I'll sit down again with Paul, the building inspector, and see what his next steps are. And he's away this week, but I'll follow up.
Yeah, and if we can report out on that next meeting. Okay. Anything else on correspondence? Anything else?
Shellfish warden.
Oh, the shellfish warden. We forgot to ask Brian about the shellfish. That's something that can come down the...
Oh, yeah, but we can deal with that.
That's not ready.
Right.
Okay, good. All right, boundaries.
So first off, we should talk about how you want to proceed with my annual review. So,
Yeah,
lead that
so-
charge.
Yes, thank you for sending that. Everybody received his review from last year. I would really like to get this done as soon as we can, realistically. I know we've got a lot going on, but I would like folks to read what they've got, put their thoughts together. I'll speak with you each individually. I will compile a document that I will share with everybody in open session, because that's the role of the road now relative to that. Probably have a meeting in advance with Greg on it, just so he's aware of what's going on, and then we'll have a formal session. So the difference is that we will not have any deliberation prior to delivering the document, which everybody will get in advance, but there will be a public document.
Not quite.
Okay.
You'll see it you'll be given to you at the meeting.
That's what I mean.
Yes.
I'm sorry. You can't give it in the packet?
No.
Okay. You don't get it at the meeting. All right, there we go. So does that work for everybody?
Yeah, it has to. On that one.
Yes. Now, keep going, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so just a quick update on communication efforts. We're still not fully utilizing, I think, the benefits of what we can achieve with Guilfoyle PR. We're working on that. I had a good discussion with him today about some missing pieces in their efforts, reaching out to the business community who wanted to add some of that, and working with the chamber on getting some of that information. So it's coming, it's just been a little slow in holding all together. Christina will be helping with making sure we're getting updated information from departments, and she's willing and able to help drive that forward, which will be helpful.
Yeah. The one thing I want to add, and I gave Greg 4 topics this morning, I really would like our board to get engaged in this a little bit, because I think having a communication platform, particularly as we're starting to talk about fiscal policy, as we're talking about the master plan, all the different things that we're sort of involved in, if there are things and topics that we should get ahead of and start thinking about strategically, what does this board want to communicate strategically to the town as leadership? Greg does a lot of work and does a great job on his articles and all that, but I think that we should be thinking as well about being a voice of that. One recommendation I had was if we can get this piece up and running, his blogging piece, we need to get off of the website with all the comments and the board stuff on that. But if we could do one newsletter to go to all residents at the end of the month prior to the November 6th vote, just to give our position again on what's coming up on November 6th, but also indicate and launch this communication platform so people know where it is. It's gone to every resident. We can certainly support it. So I think having that, and we can talk about whether we want to do a quarterly newsletter going forward that goes to everyone, but I think we need to do something prior to November 6th to get folks aware of what's coming up at the vote on November 6th, but also the communication platform.
So is this platform going to be a dialogue type
It's a
platform?
blog.
Okay.
It's a blog,
Okay.
and it's something that the PR folks will handle for us, but it'll post stories and information proactively from all the department heads, and I'm suggesting that the board of selectmen
Yeah.
think about joining in on that.
And comments disabled, or,
Yeah, that's what I, yeah.
It's news stories.
yeah, okay. Okay, and town council is okay with this?
It's got, we've talked to them about it.
Yes.
Except we've talked, the past conversation that we had was actually town officials posting in a social media context and not elected officials. But I guess there's more discussions.
Yeah, and we're not talking, so for example, an example would be, I'm not saying that we're going to write and post things individually, but from a board selectman viewpoint, if we're going to be talking about fiscal policies and promoting building of those over time, it's a news story from the board selectman and FinCom. It's not, sharing sort of, we think it should be this, it's a news story, giving them information.
Okay.
To that end, I think we need to have a underscore of existing practices of elected and non-elected town officials taking part in social media. I feel like there's just some stuff out there that I know people are trying to do the right thing. I fully believe that. I think in a couple of cases that I've accidentally come across, there's just some comments from people in public positions trying to inform the public, and it's just, I'm not sure it's in their best interest. But not trying to shut anybody down whatsoever. It's more just, I just don't know if it's really actually being productive. Glad to talk offline.
Yeah, no, I think this is an important piece though, but I think it
I would
ties
just
into
have
the
and again, I don't know, Greg, I defer to you, but a social media policy in the interim until we get up and running with this PR firm of just really encouraging people to refrain from talking about, even at the departmental level,
Yeah,
positions on things.
so maybe, can we just check with Michelle to see what she's got on that?
Yep.
So let's look at that.
Yeah, we have an older version, and police and fire have developed some newer,
Yeah, update.
updated versions of that we can utilize.
All right, that sounds good. Can I talk a little bit about the board training piece? Because I had sent all that information. I don't know if everybody received the short little PowerPoint and the 2 documents on board training. The thought would be if the committee agrees directionally, this is where we want to head, and we'll come back with the next level of content and suggestions on that. But I'd like to get moving on building that piece so that we can get back to everybody. The goal would be sometime early January for the board vice and vice chair trainings, but also something for the planning and zoning boards, hopefully end of October, early November. Just basic the technical aspects and learning effective public hearings and those things. So, does that seem to make sense for people?
I think it's necessary.
And we'll add into this, obviously, the whole communication piece. That's part of it. Good, so everybody saw everything else? Yeah. All right, good, great. Okay.
Oh, construction update, the drainage work on School Street, turning into Burnham Lane, or actually the other way around, starting on Burnham Lane and coming down School Street. That'll get underway at the end of, first of next week. They'll be mobilizing and getting that work underway. So that will cause some disruption on School Street in particular. We're replacing the old drainage line with a larger drain. Also work on the water line on Ocean Street along Black Beach. That'll begin in a couple weeks as well. So that's what's coming up there. Just more FYI for you on the speed bumps on Mill Street. I think for the most part, most of the residents have appreciated them. It definitely slows people down. There's been some concern about its impact on bus schedules. I think it's workable, but nonetheless, those concerns are there, and we'll continue to try to work with the bus company and the people impacted. So unless you feel otherwise, I think we would continue with keeping them there until late November when they are slated to come out. And that just an executive session to discuss some potential litigation regarding land trespassing, trails and land.
Anybody else have anything else to add?
Is there any update on leaf pickup?
We have a proposal in from the vendor, targeting one right before Thanksgiving and one in early December.
Arthur.
Great for the newsletter.
Yes, there's a great newsletter story, right?
Manna from heaven. How much?
About 6,000 to pick up.
For the whole town?
Yes.
Wow.
All right.
All
Well, that's
streets?
good.
All streets.
Good.
Yep, it'll be townwide.
And what are the stipulations? That people have to bag in the pickup, or do people
Yes.
just,
Yeah,
people still bag?
Yes.
They'll pick up the bags?
Yes.
Do people know what type of bags?
We'll
All right,
we'll get that out.
I'll get out of the, oh, sorry.
All right, okay.
My excitement about the operations, I'll refrain.
Are there that many people who want leaves picked up?
I think people are clued in, and people will be very
You
excited.
said 6,000 per pickup, correct? Or
For
6,000
townwide.
Oh,
Townwide.
But per ton?
So if we do it twice, it'd be $12,000.
That's what I'm getting at, $12,000 to pick leaves up.
Do people have to provide their own bags or no?
Yes.
Oh, they're not one of those suckers?
So we talked about having the DPW just come around and suck it up, but logistically, that just is fraught with problems. Weather-related, sticks, and,
So maybe we do one,
yeah, one,
do 6, and see whether people do it.
I just kind of have to say, we struggled over $10,000 for kayaks at a town meeting, $12,000 for leaf pickup.
But-
I don't know. I love the concept, but maybe we do it once this fall.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I would say there's a big difference
kinda
between
see-
$10,000 for kayaks and
No,
$6,000
but-
for all the streets in Manchester.
right.
If people are, I think it's an education challenge, if people
My-
know.
My point is,
Yeah, no, I agree.
we nickel and dime some things, and I think 12,000 is a lot to be picking up leaves. I think it's a wonderful service to offer. I would advocate for maybe doing it one pickup this
No, I agree
fall
with
as a means of maybe rolling the whole
we'll try
concept.
it, see what sort of receptivity there is. Do you think it should be pre or post Thanksgiving if we do it once?
I would do it late, you know,
The oak leaves, hold on.
yeah, that's a good, I'm not a tree expert. We have the tree warden here, he would know.
So,
Yeah.
put a proposal together, see where it comes. We'll decide.
But I think to the point that if it's not communicated, getting back to one of our collective challenges, if it's not communicated properly, it will not only be not used and utilized, it then becomes susceptible to that legitimate criticism. I would say that if it's properly communicated, that there's more value than $10,000 for kayak racks. No, it's a fair point, but
Okay.
it's all about utility.
All right, I'm going to take a motion to adjourn this meeting, go into executive session for the purpose of potential dispute litigation about trails. And
This concerns trails off of Chabaco Woods.
do I have a second?
Second.
Yep.
Yes.
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 Thank you very much.